Welcome to the Softland Central podcast, your home for market entry knowledge and resources. Softland Central is brought to you by Softland Partners, an online marketplace to help you find best fit resources for your market entry. Find them at softlandpartners.com. Hi, and welcome to the next episode of Softland Central, the hub of market entry. And we are today going to focus on an update on U.S. immigration reform. And we are just privileged to be joined by two experts in the field, Sophie Alcorn and Jonathan Grode. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks, Bill.
You.
It's so great to have you. So Sophie's on the West Coast. She's in San Francisco. Jonathan's on the East Coast. He's in Philadelphia. So we're really kind of getting some great perspectives here. So Sophie, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and Alcorn Law?
Sure, I would love to. It is so great to be here with you. Thank you, Bill, for having us. And Jonathan, it's always great to get to spend time with you and chat. And just a little bit of background. I'm a second generation U.S. immigration lawyer. I'm the daughter of an immigration lawyer and an immigrant from Germany. So I grew up with this in my blood. I'm a California State Bar certified specialist in immigration and nationality law. I've been practicing for about 11 years now. And I founded Alcorn 5 years ago out of my kitchen. I bootstrapped it to a team of about 15, and our focus is on helping rapidly scaling technology companies, startup founders, inventors, investors, and their families find ways to legally live and work and build their visions in the United States. So it's really great to be here and have the opportunity to share. Thank you.
That's so cool. Well, and how about yourself, Jonathan? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Green and Spiegel?
Sure. My name is Jonathan Grode. I'm the managing partner of Green and Spiegel's U.S. operations. We're actually a Canadian firm headquartered in Toronto. And about a decade ago, I founded the U.S. practice and have been building it up. It's interesting to listen to Sophie because of where she's based and having a heavy work within the tech community. Whilst the East Coast is growing with our startups and our startup community, I think we lag behind a little bit still in that relationship. So I can see how your firm was born out of that. We deal more with, as far as this arena goes, with companies expanding from Europe, taking existing enterprises, helping them with entry strategies, doing cross-border work between Canada and the United States. Really, we're a full service immigration firm. We do a lot of work on policy and compliance types of stuff, as well as your visa work. But I think one thing that Sophie and I share, and why I love hanging out with Sophie, if I can be honest with you, is there's nothing more exciting than helping a new company get off the ground. I mean, there really is. It's so rewarding to be there at base, to be there when you see an idea in its infancy, to like get excited about somebody else's vision and play a part in facilitating that so that they can do what they're meant to do. Our roles as attorneys, regardless of if it's immigration or a different field, is to facilitate growth when you're in a transactional practice. And Sophie and I met through Soft Landing Partners, and we've just had an instant friendship and camaraderie, and we share a very similar vision. So I could think of nobody better to partner with to talk about what's going on in immigration law than you, my friend.
Thank you. This is going to be fun.
That is so awesome. So cool. So obviously there are a lot of subjects within immigration reform, and thank you both for your kind of interest in keeping the community up to date. And as we talked about before we hopped on here, this might be appropriate that we kind of update once a quarter, simply because it's a fairly dynamic field. But the first topic we wanted to hop into, Jonathan, I think this one is kind of right up your alley, is to talk a little bit about the national interest exceptions. Do you want to maybe first tell us what they are and kind of what's going on there?
Well, so as I like to remind people, even though the calendar year turned and we have a lot of great momentum in 2021, the virus is not listening. And every country has different regimes and restrictions on how they're handling international travel during times of COVID, whether it be a quarantining or testing protocol like you see in Canada, mandatory hotel stays like you see in Australia, or what the United States has, which is blanket bans on people coming from certain countries if they were in that jurisdiction within the last 14 days. So we have right now for the UK, Ireland, the EU, Schengen zone, China, Brazil, and South Africa, a rule that says if you are in those countries within the last 14 days, you cannot enter the United States. And regardless of where you're allowed to travel, you need a negative test within the past 72 hours. Now, what's fascinating from a legal perspective is the mechanism to get around that 14-day hold is called a national interest exception. And you have to apply at the embassy that has jurisdiction over where you reside. And you have to be able to present one of three things: that your role is aiding in the cure against COVID or the fight against its spread or dealing something with vaccinations; that your job is related to the supply chain of foodstuffs, because if you remember at the beginning of the pandemic, we were worried about food shortages, so that kind of made its way into the rule. And the one that we use most often, because it's very ubiquitous, is that your role is going to aid in the economic recovery of the United States from the economic downturn associated with the pandemic. And it's that sort of business development, this idea that you need to be here to create jobs, that falls in line with what we do through the partnership, and also the way that most people get exemptions. Now, what's funky and what's challenging is we had this real expectation with the new administration, we were going to see a change. We were almost going to see like a lessening of some of these restrictions. We were going to see some other executive orders regarding what visas can be processed pulled back. And not to get political, but the legal mechanism is important to understand, because what happened is prior to the inauguration, the CDC came down and said, we feel a 72-hour test before arriving in the United States is the most effective way of dealing with the spread of COVID. The Trump administration said, okay, well, with that, we're going to end these NIE, national interest exception requirements, for all of these countries except for China. And we're going to end all of them, and that's going to be effective on the 26th. That put the new administration in a very difficult position.
Especially because they weren't talking to each other.
Not at all.
There was no overlap.
Yeah, there was very little communication. But what ended up happening is, before the NIE rule expired, the new administration under Biden put it back in place, added South Africa because of the variant of the virus from there. But what's really interesting from a jurisprudence perspective, and not to get too heavy into the law, is it served as a new executive order, Bill. And as it became a new executive order, they needed new rules disseminating the protocol, because they couldn't rely on the old protocol. So these things that we were dealing with for 9 months have actually been paused. And we find ourselves in a very funky position now, where it's actually harder to get the national interest exception today than it was prior to inauguration.
So, Jonathan, is the backup route that you're still suggesting just go hang out in Cancun for 15 days before you head to the United States?
Sophie, I mean, like the expat community hanging out in Cancun is pretty large right now, and that is one way around it. You can go to other countries as well, non-Schengen countries like Croatia. A lot of people are using Turkey. Morocco is getting popular. I got like Dutch people and French people hanging out in Guadeloupe in the Caribbean,
That's nice.
So there are creative ways, but unfortunately, when you really do have a business need, or if you're traveling with small children, there's no way around the NIE. There are exceptions to the NIE if you're a green card holder, if you have a child that's a U.S. citizen, spouse that's a U.S. citizen. There are some exemptions, but it's a puzzle. It's really a puzzle. And the interesting thing about the Biden administration and their executive order is that they charged the various branches to come up with a better plan within 14 days, which should be next week. So maybe we'll get something a little bit more tangible, a little bit more predictable. But as Sophie's expression tells you, we're not holding our breaths. That's your update on the travel stuff. So.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So is there anything else to add, do you think, on the national interest exception, or is that pretty well give us a good
John
update?
did a great job, and I just tell people it's a time to slow down and enjoy the tropics and have a little vacation. Lord knows we all need it this year. But hopefully we'll have some more of a concrete, practicable process in place by the next time we check in here.
Well, and Croatia and Cancun all have good internet, so it's not all bad.
And what's fascinating, Bill, and this is what really amazes us, is that some countries that have really been hit hard by not having tourism, like Barbados, for example, they've created special visa classifications where you can hang out there. They're like digital nomad visas.
Yes, Costa Rica just passed their digital nomad category.
Right. So like that's okay. So us people over here, everybody's going to Barbados. Costa Rica is an amazing place to visit. But these countries, and like I'll just give the Barbados one for example, but for $2,000 for a single individual, $3,000 for a family, you can get permission to work remotely for a United States business or anywhere in the world from that country. And what's fascinating from a visa perspective is you do not need a US visa to work for a US company if you are not physically present in the United States. So for people that are having trouble, like
we can offer all of the H-1B lottery rejects in Barbados for a year.
That's not bad. You could be
worse. That's our next topic. I'm just thinking of all the other topics, though. Then we have to talk to a tax attorney to figure out, or a tax accountant to figure out what the tax implications are of being offshore.
We need the government trade rep to come on too.
Exactly.
Fortunately, Barbados thinks the dollars that you're going to be spending there is worth more than taxing you on your income. So I think you're okay there. But yeah, part two, let's bring in an accountant.
Right. Yeah. They'll sell enough in rum probably to offset the tax problems.
I think that's their thinking.
Fair enough. So, Sophie, do we want to hop into the H-1B lottery?
Yeah, let's talk about this because this is late breaking. This is super late breaking news. So we've all been watching with bated breath the whole H-1B legal saga over the last 4-5 months or so, really 4 years. But there's been a lot of litigation. They were going to make the job classifications more narrow. The prior administration tried to raise the wages across the board by about 25-30%. There's a lot of litigation. Most of that is kind of on hold right now. But then there was this additional midnight proposal by the Trump administration leaving office saying, hey guys, we don't like the randomness of the H-1B lottery, which happens every year in March, April. The reason we have an H-1B lottery, by the way, let me take another step back. An H-1B is a professional working visa for somebody basically who has a bachelor's degree, who's doing a job that requires a bachelor's degree. And a U.S. company sponsors them, and the company has to have the ability to pay them. Those are the basic elements, like your standard work visa in the United States. Congress limited them to 85,000 new ones per government fiscal year, but historically, over the last several years, the demand has always been over 200,000, leaving people with about a 1 in 4 or 1 in 5, 1 in 3 chance of getting selected, depending on if they have the benefit of having an extra chance because they got a master's or PhD in the United States. So there's this annual lottery, happens every April. Last year, they rolled out a wonderful new electronic registration system. So it's just a website, and it saved tons of time and money for employers and made it a lot more accessible. The government's only charging $10 now for you to see if your candidates are selected. Your candidates don't need to be in the United States. They can be anywhere in the world, have any citizenship. Everybody has an equal chance. So that's the H-1B, but it's random and it's really unpredictable. And that does not give employers much security in knowing whether they'll actually be able to move their candidates to the United States. So the Trump administration had a problem with this, and they actually issued a rule that became a final government rule, said, forget the randomness. We are going to do a wage-based allocation from highest relative salary to lowest relative salary based on the geography of the job, the person's level of professional advancement, and the type of job that they're doing. So it was basically a pay-to-play system that they wanted to roll out. And we didn't hear much from the Biden administration about what they were going to do with it. And they had the legal authority to postpone any recently finalized regulations for another couple months. But the H-1B lottery is coming up imminently, like in 3 or 4 weeks. So we were waiting. So the drama ended yesterday. It was announced that these changes are going to be delayed for at least a year. And so this year's lottery is going to be random. It is going to be electronic. It is going to happen. You don't need to offer people the highest wage level 4 in order to have a shoe-in this year. It's not going to be that way this year. Maybe next year it will be. Maybe they'll try to change it. Maybe they won't try to change it, but there's going to be litigation that will change it. But this whole drama has been fascinating to me because one of the Biden campaign promises in their immigration platform was to secure and protect American workers through the H-1B program. So they actually have some alignment with the prior administration on this topic of H-1Bs.
Sophie, I think it can't be lost on people that, the Democratic Party traditionally have been protectors of U.S. workers. And while we expect like great advancements for immigration, I think it's not going to be a free for all. It's not going to be completely open. But what I think is interesting, about some of the Biden proposals and what we're seeing and some of the things that they're trying to push through Congress is they want to make people with the STEM degrees, the PhDs, exempt from these annual quotas. They want to give a faster pathway to permanent residency. They want to have it more tailored to the sectors of the economy where growth and facilitating visas will create jobs for other workers. And I think something that I'm constantly reiterating and that I love about this country is, 1/2 of all the Fortune 100 companies were founded by immigrants or children of immigrants. So innovation through immigration.
And 53% of the unicorn billion-dollar startups will have immigrant founders as well.
Okay, there you go. So I mean, it's a critical. So I think what we're seeing is a government that wants to be smarter with the way that it allocates the visas. And when we talk about comprehensive immigration reform, there's a couple points there that we might bring up again. But don't think that the H-1B visas are just going to start flowing like water. They're not going to be like ubiquitously available like we saw maybe in the mid 2000s.
Right.
One thing I will say though is, and Sophie, I'd love to get your take on this, I think this year is a great year to apply for the H-1B lottery. I think
so too. Probably better than any other recent year.
So what's telling you that? Why do you think it's a better year?
Because of the economy right now and the fact that we've had so many layoffs in certain sectors. It's very fascinating because you look at the tech sector where 75% of the H-1B visa holders have their jobs. And you have unemployment rates that have been pretty much static since the pandemic started, whereas you have 10, 15, 20% unemployment in other sectors. The H-1B is used across the board, regardless of area of industry, as long as a position requires a degree and the foreign national has a degree related to that field of endeavor. So because I think the demand for the H-1B visa is going to be down this year, we're going to see less applicants, which will increase your chances of being selected. So if you're one of these people that has 3 years of OPT time and you're like, I don't need to do it this year, I would
do it every year.
Yeah, well, do it every year anyway. But as Sophie said, the lottery is not especially cost prohibitive mechanism from entering the system. We're going to have most likely better numbers. So I say go for it. What do you think, So?
Oh, yeah. COVID, higher unemployment, less demand for immigrants, higher chances of particular immigrants being selected for your company. Definitely. But the only countervailing force that is hard to quantify is the Biden effect of America's brand changing in the world, and if that will somehow cause more people to apply just because they think it'll be easier. I don't know.
There's some very nuanced stuff going on, Bill, that is probably for the immigration geeks to talk about. But some of the stuff that the Trump administration was trying to do was cut out H-1Bs being used by outsourcing companies. Where they would just sort of randomly send anybody who raised their hand and said they wanted to go to America, they would pop in an H-1B visa. The top 5 companies applying for H-1Bs are not Google, IBM, and Microsoft. It's Infosys and, those kinds of companies. So, those restrictions that were attempted to be put in place by the Trump administration actually never got to fruition. So to Sophie's point, people might say, oh my God, like, let's get on the caravan, the H-1B caravan, and like, let's come to the US. So it is a little bit difficult to bring. And I think that that's a great counterpoint, Sophie.
Cool. Well, I almost think of
another quick little tip I want to share, which is that if somebody wants to bring a professional here and they don't get selected in the H-1B lottery, there's this workaround called a cap-exempt H-1B. And there's a nonprofit that's scaling this. And Jonathan, I can give you more details, but basically they take foreign workers in STEM fields, and these workers teach group projects to underserved diverse US student populations. That's a group project for the company. The nonprofit gives them a 5-hour-a-week H-1B with no lottery, and then the company can piggyback on it. It's a way to get an H-1B any time of year with no lottery. So I'm really excited about that, and I hope that a lot of people, I hope that a lot of people start using it.
Yeah, I mean, there are some other creative workarounds as well, using J1 visas and incubators, and there's been some other H-1B programs in the past. I mean, Bill, I guess the point is, if you want to take a takeaway, just like we cultivate ingenuity amongst our members within the partnership, the lawyers that are associated with this group also do that. And whilst we're never going to advise you in any way, shape, or form to bend or break the regulations, I think having the ability to think outside of the box and leverage some of these lesser known provisions can be really beneficial. So yeah, by all means, if you have questions, you can reach out to either of us. But moreover, just know that it is still possible to take advantage of this hiring bubble with the H-1B program, that now is the time to really get cracking on it. And this is a particularly good year to try.
Very cool. Very cool. That's great. That's a great update. As you were talking about the different ways to think about it, Sophie, I was thinking, gosh, this sounds so much like the Sicilian negotiation in The Princess Bride, where he's saying, well, if you think about it, this way, then you would have switched the cups, and it's this whole sort of Machiavellian sort of thing, and in the end, you just have to take the step, right?
Inconceivable, though.
There you go. It's inconceivable. Yeah, exactly. So who'd like to tell us a little bit about the Muslim ban? Obviously, that's been taken down.
I'm just super excited. It's over, and the State Department is being tasked with figuring out some sort of reparations process for all the folks who got affected. I don't know, Jonathan, if you get more concrete details on that.
As somebody that represented a group of Syrian Christians 4 years ago when this went down, and was literally 2 weeks of 2 hours of sleep a night, this is such a welcome change. And I think it actually, what's really most amazing about it is the language that the administration is using.
Yeah.
It's really singling a change in approach to immigration. I teach a class on immigration, actually it's going on this semester, and I'm actually doing a comparative analysis between the rhetoric from the previous administration with this administration, and going from referring to foreign nationals as aliens,
right,
to this administration calling them new Americans, to saying that our job is to protect US workers, to saying immigrants enhance job prospects for US workers. It's a big change in the mental approach associated with immigration. So yeah, taking away these bans, working on family reunification, trying to solve the issues for the deferred action for childhood arrivals. These are all amazing things, but it's a diametric change in the way that we're even conceptualizing what it means to be new in this country. And to me, it's a beautiful thing. It really is. So
it's heartwarming for sure. It makes me think. Yeah, we are truly open for business. So that's at the end of the day, that's critical. So consulates reopening. What it sounds like there's a sort of an incremental opening of consulates. How's that
I think it's
going?
still going to go pretty slowly. It's
Yeah.
taking people a long time to get interviews. They get postponed, scheduling months out. Uh, Jonathan, I don't know. It seems to me like
I liken
India
it
takes
to
forever.
a game of whack-a-mole. I mean, honestly, that is what it's like. It's like one consulate opens up and you try to hit it and
Yeah,
it's gone, and then sometimes you hit it there. I mean, you really have to look at viral load and country conditions.
yeah,
So, somewhere like Australia, which is like next to impossible to get into right now because
right.
of quarantine and there's like
He's
limited flights.
processing.
They have a appointment. I can get you in there tomorrow, like because they have no virus there. And some of
Right,
the Asian countries are pretty good, but
right.
trying to get an appointment out of Europe, trying to do something in Canada, it's
Yeah.
like next to impossible right now.
And then
So
I've got a bunch of Australians hanging out in Costa Rica, the Caribbean, and they're all trying to figure out where they can get their visas from. And it's really hard to find the consulates that will do it.
Costa Rica is actually working pretty good right now.
And
We
great.
can talk about it if you want. But yeah, it's literally whack-a-mole. It's
Yeah.
visa processing whack-a-mole. So I kind of like take the approach like scattershot. I'm just gonna smack a whole bunch of them out there and see which one comes through. But it's tough. Logistically, I don't think I've ever experienced a harder time in immigration law when it comes to visa processing.
Hmm.
But what I tell people is like
That's true.
you can't. Now more than ever, you have to just really level with the people you're working with. You can be the best immigration attorney in the entire country. If an appointment's canceled because of virus, it's canceled. And the more you can express that and get that point across, the better.
So is your expectation for that to improve as immigration or as vaccination by country and region is realized?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
technically speaking, as of June of 2020, the consulates are at their discretion allowed to open and process visas. But there was a subsequent State Department memo that came out in the fall that reduced in-person staff to 20% across the globe. So it's really just a logistical issue at this point. I I personally feel bad for the people that are waiting for green cards outside the country because
Yeah.
I mean we're still waiting for people to be rescheduled that had their appointments canceled in March of 2020. Like we're
Wow.
going
And
on a year, and this is like family reunification stuff, so it's tough.
there's big backlog stateside too with USCIS. They have thousands or tens of thousands of unprocessed applications that arrived in the mailbox and nobody's taken any action on them
Like
and people aren't getting their receipt notices.
Bill, like stuff filed in October, November, they haven't even cashed the checks.
That's crazy.
And then they're like worried that they're gonna run out of money, right?
But that's a separate issue, right? But yeah, the virus fatigue, as much as we all feel it, the government on the bureaucratic side of things is
It'll take a
feeling it
long
to an
time.
even heavier degree.
Sure. Well, they probably don't have as, especially if they're cut down to 20% in their offices, they don't have the flexibility to do as much remote as the rest of us do. So they probably have a lot of limitations.
Well, there's just like a heap of cybersecurity concern. There's just
Right.
so many different layers there that
Right.
it's very challenging.
So let's shift gears and talk about comprehensive immigration reform. And I guess what are the kind of the big issues, big topics there that we want to make sure get
There's so
mentioned?
many exciting proposals. They would be so good. I think, Jonathan, you can talk to the feasibility of all of this, but I'm just delighted by the potpourri of ideas that's out there. There's like ending green card backlogs, and like an Indian professional with a PhD might have to wait 150 years in line for a green card, which is insane. And
That seems like a long time.
it's a really long time. And it's not like trust in estate law where you can pass it on to your children after you're gone, right? If you haven't gotten it yet. And we might have a startup visa, and there might be some new like regional sponsorship of green cards where a Midwestern town could petition for extra international doctors, or in Silicon Valley could petition for more software engineers. And then the proposal Jonathan talked about, if you get a PhD in the United States in STEM field, you can just automatically pass immediate turn in line to get a green card.
Yeah.
So wonderful.
Feasibility. I mean, not to throw cold water on anything, but like
It's a lot.
2007, they tried comprehensive immigration reform under George W. 2013, they had a bipartisan gang of
Right.
8 senators that tried to pass them. Anytime something starts out gang of whatever, I don't think it's going to pass. You know, what's different here is that day one, they sent a bill to Congress. Day one. And to me, that really signaled a very high level of engagement with immigration as an issue. Look, do I think that we're going to get a pathway to permanent residency for all 11 million undocumented foreign nationals in the United States? Probably not. Do I think that the dreamers, that the kids that were brought here as children will get relief? I do. I just think that, and the Biden administration has already signaled this, I think it's going to be a series of bills instead of one comprehensive immigration reform. I think there's going to be some advancement, certainly on the DACA. I think that we're going to see an advancement, Sophie, on the numerical limitations associated with the green card process, especially for Indian foreign nationals. That's been rumbling for years. I think we will see some advancements within H-1B visas and that kind of stuff. I do think fundamentally that comprehensive reform will be a challenge. And I do think even though this bill was introduced on day one, other priorities like stimulus, infrastructure, tax reform are going to probably wiggle their way in ahead of the queue. But I share some enthusiasm. I do. I really do.
And the piecemeal approach might be most effective, and especially for Softland and our global business interests, the two parties might reach more agreement on an economic centered, here's the types of green cards and visas we need to help create more jobs for Americans.
I just think people need to be aware of the fact that anything that comes with an advancement is going to come with heavier enforcement as well. Like, the GOP is not just going to hand it over. I think there is an understanding that something desperately needs to be done with the border situation that we have going on, with the people lining up and having to deal with amnesty outside the country. I think, that kind of stuff is going to be addressed. And I think there'll be a lot of bipartisan support there. But to just sort of open everything up and give status without finishing off the wall or having mandatory e-verify, it's going to be a tough sell because these people need things to campaign on too. I mean, without getting political, there is a political aspect to legislative reform.
Absolutely.
So thinking about the, just from the economic side of this, and certainly there's going to be a big focus on recovery probably for the next 2 years, you would think. And so you had sort of alluded to that might help prioritize some of the economic type immigration legislation. What's your expectation in terms of what might be prioritized there and what might get ahead of the list?
Well, emotionally, I think the DACA situation is going to be first up. In fact, there's already a bipartisan separate bill that's gaining a lot of traction. So that I think is imminent. I'm very, very intrigued by what Sophie alluded to as what they're calling the Heartland visa, where
so cool.
Individual regions are going to be able to use economic data to find visa classifications for certain industries in certain areas. I mean, one of the things that's been very challenging with immigration, if you look at it, is it's federal. Like Sophie's in California, I'm in Pennsylvania. We practice the same law.
Same thing, same rules.
But
and you have the Canadian element of your practice, and they have a wonderful system based on economic need that's constantly changing, right?
Yeah, exactly. They have a flexible thing. But to be able to have a visa classification that says, in Sophie's backyard, Silicon Valley desperately needs computer engineers, and in Philly, we need like life science people, and to create like 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 visas just for that region. And then those people have to stay in that area, which would be one of the ties to it, I think is great. There was something also, Bill, that was in 2013, Bill, called the X visa. It never made it into
Yeah. I'm rooting for
rules.
this.
Well, I freaking love it because it's a venture capital based visa classification where if you have obtained, and at the time it was $200,000 in venture capital money, you can get the X visa to direct and develop that particular enterprise. And I would love to see something like that come back.
Well, I know there's lobbying for the regulatory version of that right now in
Yeah.
DC today. So hopefully we'll at least get the parole version, even if it's not a real.
Yeah, I mean, but there's also, and this is the reality of it, there's a huge educational component to it that's required because unfortunately, a large portion of the population views visas as people taking jobs away from US workers. And we have an obligation, as attorneys, as people that want to promote foreign nationals coming and being innovators in this country, really adhering to like the core of what it means to be American and entrepreneurial, to say, no, these are not taking your jobs. These people are actually creating jobs. And the economic data suggests it. The multipliers suggest the number of jobs that are created for every foreign national that comes into the country. It's just, there has to be a return to the mentality of the United States is somewhere where you can come and create. And I think we lost that a little bit over the past 4 years, but it's so embedded in who we are that I think we can bring it back, and having an immigration policy that reflects that is part of it.
Well, the notion that, as you said, Sophie, 53% of the unicorns are founded by foreign nationals, and Jonathan, you said, I think it was the Fortune 500, at least half of the Fortune 500 are founded by foreign nationals, certainly underscores the fact that we are a land of immigrants for sure, and so it's great to see the energy come back into enabling that process. So, there are so many great takeaways here, but the one thing that particularly hits me is not only is this a complicated process, but it's a dynamic process that actually, looking ahead, at least for the foreseeable year or two, looks like it will be maybe even more dynamic, or maybe even more favorably dynamic. So, how do you advise people to sort of navigate the process? It seems like it would be difficult to go this alone, just simply because of the sort of complexity and the sort of ever-changing sort of regulatory issues.
Well, I don't think anybody's trying to navigate business immigration without an attorney anymore. So I think that's a great first step. Definitely utilize the services of an experienced attorney, whatever route you want to go. I always start in my consultations with companies and professionals by asking, okay, where do you want to be? Because there's 15 weird visa strategies we could use to support you, but if we don't know what the ultimate aim is, it's fruitless for me to just propose a bunch of ideas. But if I can know, where are you now and where do you want to be, then there's always creative options that we can explore to help you get
there. This is why I get along with Sophie. I mean, I frame it a different way, but it's the same idea. Like, I think there's too many people out there that say, here's a visa classification, this is what I have to do to get it. I'm going to live my life to fulfill this classification. And I say that is the wrong approach. My job is to find the visa that fits what your needs and goals are. And I don't want you to have to sacrifice, unless it's absolutely necessary, you achieving your goal or dream because of the constraints of a visa. We should be able to find a visa solution that fits your goals. And I think that's even more critically important with the startup and entrepreneurial community. So yes, Sophie, boom, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Virtual fist bump, I love it. So, essentially goal-centered sort of consultation, so that you fit the sort of the right solution to the objective.
Exactly.
That makes total sense. So, again, you've told us that kind of given us a great update here, and also told us that we should have some expectation of sort of continual adjustment in tactics and strategies over the coming months. But if if we asked, would you come back maybe periodically to give us an update here?
Oh, Bill, this was awesome.
This was really fun.
I mean, I feel like we were just kind of hanging out and having a coffee. So as much as we're just staring at the screens, this was really enjoyable. So.
Unfortunately for Sophie, it's a little early to have a cold refreshment, but we didn't want to get too aggressive here on a Friday.
We're getting close over on the.
We are getting close.
11 a.m.
Well, we can schedule just slightly later next time, maybe. But so in terms of getting in touch with you, obviously we'll put contact info down in the sort of summary here. But is there a preferred mode of contact for you, Sophie?
Sure. You can always email us, hello@alcorn.law. We have a website that has a bunch of info. I have a podcast you can subscribe to, Immigration Law for Tech Startups, and you can follow my Sophie column weekly in TechCrunch.
My goodness. And Jonathan, how about for you? What's the best way for folks?
Telepathy.
You find that works?
Yeah, no, it works great. Email's good. We have a very robust blog that focuses on solutions for people. You can sign up for that through our website. But I think one thing that Sophie and I share is if you get in touch, however you get in touch, we will respond. And for those of you associated with this organization, we're happy to give our time.
Cool. That's so kind. So thank you both very much. I hope you enjoy your weekend. Thank you everybody who has viewed the podcast today, and certainly like it so we keep you in the loop on what's going on next. Again, have a great weekend to both of you, and thanks so much for all the great information.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
A one-way ticket across the nation, a one-way